Welcome back. This is a throwback episode. It's actually the very first episode that I did, and it's about raising private money. I actually split the episodes into two different. I combined them, in this case, for ease of consumption. I raise 100% of the money that I now buy all of my deals with through people just like you and me. I don't do hard money. I don't take out bank loans. Sometimes I may use a little bit of business working capital, but for the most part, every deal I do is 100% funded, all through private money. And so if you want to learn how to do that, this will be a great episode for you. Also, you'll notice a different quality of oration. As I said, this was my first podcast episode. I thought about editing it to clean it up, but then I wanted to leave it just so you can see firsthand that when you're doing something new, it's okay to suck in the beginning. And so you'll notice a significant different quality. But it's important. I thought it was more important for you to know that you just start in the beginning and then you get better. And you will see that firsthand right here. Also, excuse the corny acronym, but I think the points are valid. Lastly, one thing I did not cover in this episode is SEC or Securities and Exchange Commission compliance. When you're raising private money, do not advertise your deal on social media. Do not tell people how much you'll pay them. This is a securities violation and it isn't compliant. And if you want to know how to raise money in a way that is compliant, simply put into ChatGPT, how can I raise private money for my real estate deals in a way that is SEC compliant, and ask it to turn it into a checklist. And voila. Which, by the way, if you're not using AI, you are not maximizing your potential as a human being. So start using. So with that, I hope you all enjoy. What's up, everyone? Today I want to talk about private money, and specifically how I raised and leveraged private money in my real estate business, particularly in my first 12 months doing so full time. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Ryan Rice. I'm a full-time real estate investor. I just finished my third year investing in real estate full-time, where I flip houses, I wholesale, and I buy rentals. And it is December of 2023 for those of you that are listening in the future and want to know how, where in the spectrum 3 years was. So, from June 2021 to April of 2022, I bought 23 flips, all with $0 out of my own pocket at the time that I bought the homes. And I used hard and private money to fund all of those deals. And so I raised just over $1 million in private money. And to define what private money means, at least for me, private money is like people like you and me that just have some extra cash in the bank. So truly private money. And they are looking for an investment vehicle. They don't have the time or resources or don't have the desire to get into real estate, but they have extra cash, and that's the way that they can put money into real estate and help their money grow. And so that is how I would define private money in this sense. And again, I raised over $1 million of that in my first 12 months. And then I raised over $3 million in hard money. And for those of you that don't know what hard money is, it's called hard money just because the money is backed with a hard asset, meaning someone loans me money and they take a first position lien against the asset, which is the house. And if I stop paying them, or if I do something different than the terms that we've agreed upon, they can take the asset. And so it is a strictly based asset loan. So in the first 12 months, I raised about $4 million in total money to buy the 23 houses. Now I am funding almost all of my deals that I'm doing exclusively with private money. So I did about 45 to 50 real estate deals this year. Not all of them were flips. I didn't buy 45 to 50 houses. A lot of those were wholesale deals, but almost all of the homes that I'm purchasing now were funded exclusively with private money, meaning I found somebody, again, just some extra cash in the bank, and they'll fund the entire project. I make this content just because I don't want you to make the same mistakes I have, and I hope there's something that you can learn from the mistakes that I have made and the experience that I've had. And I don't have anything to sell you. I just want you to get rich flipping houses, and I hope this is helpful. So let's get into it. I have kind of developed my own framework, and I did it in a way that hopefully you guys can remember. And so I'm going to use the word private. And it's going to be an acronym, and hopefully that can help you remember. And if it doesn't, then oh well, I put all that effort for no reason. But here are some of the steps in that framework of the word private. So let's start with the word P. P is for professional. And what I mean by professional is I got so knowledgeable on the subject of flipping houses, raising money, how it works, how a deal is structured, what's the definition of a good deal, what's the definition of a bad deal. I got so knowledgeable of that I could speak to it like a professional. And I wasn't a professional yet because I had done a couple real estate deals in my career prior to my leaving my previous job. But I was far from a professional, but I got the knowledge and I practiced speaking to that knowledge enough to where I could come off sounding like a professional. Right. So, and I think that was it. That was a very important aspect. How I did that is I joined several different masterminds, but there was one mastermind that I joined in particularly that focused on flipping houses virtually using other people's money. And I downloaded all of that information. Not only did I consume the information, but I studied it. I wrote almost an entire notebook worth of notes. And I wanted to make sure if I'm going to talk to people about it that I knew what I was talking about, how it worked, because I knew that when I'm going to go raise money, the key to me raising money is going to, people need to perceive that I know what I'm talking about, which I did. I didn't necessarily have the experience just yet, but I studied the information enough to where I could come off sounding like a professional. And I think that's really important because I do think that there's a lot of people that try to raise private money and they don't do the due diligence first. And it's a necessary step, right? It's like a cart before the horse type thing in order to raise private money. And this is money that people have worked their asses off for however long. And, they might have 50, 100, 150K sitting in the bank, and they're not going to give it to you just because, you think they should. They're going to give it to you because you sound like you know what you're talking about. And so, being able to speak and understand the aspects and the fundamentals of flipping a house and first position liens and second position liens and how all of that works, I think was key to being able to raise private money. And so if it's something that you are going to venture to do, I'll never say that you should do anything, but what I did that worked really well for me is I joined a group, and that group had extremely good content where I could consume the information and understand how to speak to it like a professional could. So that worked really well for me. I'm sure there's a bunch of ways where you could go get that knowledge, but for me, that was one of the fastest ways that I could get that knowledge. And I think about this a lot. Like, I can pay for something via time or experience. I could pay for something via time or via money. Right. And at that time, I chose to pay for something with money that is going to shorten the amount of time in order for me to get the knowledge that I needed. Right. And so the reverse of that could have been I could have, paid for it with the experience and learned what I learned in that short amount of time over the course of, 2, 3, 4, 5 years investing or trying to raise private money. And I would have learned all of that stuff in that way. But in the moment, time was more important to me, and I chose to pay for it. Pay for that knowledge with money. So that was the first thing that I did. The R stands for release into the universe. So I started to release into the universe everything that I was doing. I started telling people what I was doing in all different formats, right? So, if you focus hard enough on the P for a professional, you can probably get your first deal. And then once you get your first deal, you start telling everyone what it is that you're doing in all sorts of different fashions, and you'll start planting seeds, right? And so I started to release to everyone what it was I was doing, and an avenue that worked really well for me and a platform that worked really well for me in order to do that was Instagram. I started taking before and after photos. I started documenting, the flips, and a lot of people got interested in it. And over time, right, over 12 months, the sliding scale was a significantly more increasing amount of people, the more and more experience I got. But the second I started telling people about what I was doing, the more, quote, leads that I got, right? And so I would tell people what I was doing, and anytime anyone voiced any sort of interest in what I was doing or potentially investing, I would write their name down, and I would come back to them when I had a deal, and we would start to have a discussion. And so I think telling people, or releasing into the universe, as I'll call it, so it fits the acronym, is a really, really important step, because the more people that know about what you're doing, the more opportunities you can create, the more leads you're going to generate. Some other ways that I started telling people about what I was doing is everyone that was close to me, I would talk to them about what I was doing, right? Friends, family. And it wasn't like I didn't show up and shove it down their throat that I was buying houses and raising money and all this stuff. But in gradual conversation, I sound naturally interested in what the other person is doing. They're going to, be interested in what I'm doing. And I tell them, like, hey, I've been buying houses. And one thing that's actually been working really well is I can generate some extra cash flow for people that aren't in real estate, but that might be interested, right? And then I'll just stop talking. And then I'll gauge interest. So I have raised, it's probably approaching $500,000 from Instagram alone from people that I don't know. And I've also raised money from just casual relationships with friends and family. I've raised a lot of money with casual relationships, with people that were close to me. And I've also raised money from, relationships like, at the gym, or just in any opportunity that I had to meet somebody. I would take it as an opportunity to talk to them about what I was doing, or to release into the universe what I was doing. And so, for example, if there was someone that I was working out with at the gym, or someone that I talked to a lot at the gym, obviously, like, a very common question is, what do you do? Or, how are things going? The what do you do question, I would say, hey, I invest in real estate, and I help everyday people like you and I invest in real estate as well. And those that were interested, they'd be like, "What? Huh? What was that?" And I would get to talk about it, and it was relationships like that turned into investments. So, like for example, one example that I have where this worked really well is I had a neighbor. She lived across the street. She was VP for, Fortune 10, 15 company in finance, had a lot of extra cash on the sidelines. Obviously, like, she had kids. My wife and I had kids. We got to talk, about things about each other. And the more that we got to know each other, she would ask questions about what it was that I was doing. I would explain to her what she was doing. And she ended up investing hundreds of thousands of dollars into my real estate deals and my business. So that's just an example. And I think there are so many of those relationships out there. I think the task at first seems daunting to find those people, but they are out there. You just have to, one, talk to people in a way that you know what you're talking about, and then two, tell people about what you're doing, right? So be professional, release what you're doing into the universe, and that's a good step forward. Let's move to the I. So the I is for influence, and what I mean by that is I communicated to prospective people with money that would want to invest, and I communicated from a place of influence. And influence is a skill set that I think I developed since my early 20s. For example, when one of my first jobs while I was in college is I went and I knocked on doors and I sold exterior painting jobs to complete strangers. And a lot of them slammed the door in my face, but I learned a lot about how to sell to strangers. And I think that really helped me develop the skill of influence. And then the skill of influence is something I've just always been passionate about and something I've studied, and I think I've got a lot of practice on. And so what I mean by communicating with influence is, Like, for example, I'm a part of a mastermind where there's a lot of money in that mastermind, and some people might be actively getting deals, some people might be struggling to get deals, but some of those people might have money on the sidelines and they're ready to invest. And let's say we have like a Discord community. What not to do, or a way to communicate with zero influence, is to put something on Discord, nobody knows who you are, and say, hey, I have a deal. I need $50,000. Anyone interested? That is probably not going to generate much interest, right? And, you know, I laugh when I say that, and I don't mean to, not throwing shade at anyone, but there's a lot of people that think that, you know, might join a mastermind or might join a group and think that because they have a good deal, like people, you know, so many people out there with money should just, you know, come running to them with the desire to fund their deal. And that's just not how it works, right? You have to have the ability to communicate with influence and be somebody that somebody else wants to be associated with. I truly believe that when you're raising private money, obviously the deal is the fundamental thing that makes it good. But, you know, the second part of that is the person is investing in you. And if you are not somebody that influences them in a good way, or makes them feel comfortable, or makes them feel like you know what you are doing, in other words, you don't have influence over them, they're not going to give you money. And so I think it's really important to learn how to communicate with influence. And if that's not a skill set that you have, you can do things like Robert Cialdini has great books. One of them is called Influence. That's probably, in my opinion, one of the better books on sales and influence out there. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, who was he was like a terrorist investigator, and he had to negotiate with like the most extreme terrorists that ever existed. That book has actually helped me a lot because it takes extreme frameworks and it turns them into simple ways to communicate with people in order to, you know, influence an outcome or to influence their perception of things. So if that's not a skill set that you've developed yet, you know, not to worry, the more repetitions you put in attempting to influence, the better you're going to get at it. So just keep trying. But I think it's important to make a conscious effort that when you're communicating or when you are raising private money and asking people for their hard-earned cash, you have to do it with a place of influence, and you have to do it from a perspective of nobody owes you anything, right? The person that you're talking to does not owe you a thing. You're not entitled to their money by any means, and you need to put in work to influence and make sure that how you're, you know, presenting the deal to them is a way that's going to be beneficial. And a quick example of this is if I had to raise private money in a way that would not be effective, I would talk to someone and I would say, hey, I really need your $50,000 for this real estate deal. Are you interested? That's probably not going to gain much interest. On the contrary, if I communicate with you and I say, hey, how are you? How are your kids? And I start talking with them and I'm genuinely interested in them, they're going to naturally ask back. And I've been flipping houses. I have this, I actually have a unique system set up to where I can generate some extra passive income for people that have cash on the sidelines. And I pause and I see that they're interested. And then when I have a deal, I go back to them and I say, hey, I got this great opportunity. It's a great asset, great neighborhood, good school district, lower risk, really, really good opportunity to earn some extra cash. Are you interested? Right. And so I phrase it in a way to them where the benefit is to them. The benefit is not to me. Right. I'm not communicating to them from a perspective of like, hey, give me your money. I'm communicating to them from a perspective of, hey, here's what I can offer you. And, through me getting to know them and what it is that they value, I have the ability to make that seem attractive to them. So the I is for influence. Communicate with influence. The V is for visual. So I package these deals when I have leads and when I've communicated with people that are interested and they voice that they're interested. Then when I have a deal, I package it in a way that is attractive. And again, I learned this by being in a mastermind that I was in. But I put together a 2-page PDF that has details about the deal, details about the neighborhood, outlines all of the numbers. And it's essentially a presentation of the deal. So it shows pictures of the houses, shows a map of the comparable sales. And so it's visually packaged in a way that, one, is easy for them to comprehend. They can comprehend and read through it in 5 minutes and see the value that the deal brings. And two, it just, again, it kind of piggybacks off of P for professional. It makes me seem even more like a professional. The lenders that have been in the game for a while that I showed this PDF to, they gave me feedback that they work with people that have been flipping houses for like decades. And this is the best presentation that they have received on a deal. And so if you can package the deal in a way that is visually appealing to somebody and it's easy for them to understand, they can quickly understand, and it's easy to tell whether or not the deal is good very quickly, then that is going to increase the likelihood that they sign up. Moving on to the A, once I had a deal, once I had a private lender, I always communicated the good, the bad, the ugly. I've had a lot of bad and ugly and a lot of private money deals. And it's important to communicate all of that stuff. And what I found is that increases the level of trust. And I've had deals that have gone south where I haven't lost my investors' money. But those same investors reinvest with me because they know that regardless of what happens, I'm going to communicate and their investment is going to be protected. And I keep them in the loop and I let them know what's going on. And so always communicate once you get the private money is going to be important in order for you to generate somebody that wants to come back and invest with you again. And so treating your investor like a customer and making sure that experience is a great experience for them, which in what's worked well for me in making sure that it's a good experience for the customer is eliminating uncertainty. Right? If someone's got 50 to 100K in a deal and there's ever uncertainty around, oh my gosh, what's going on with my money? Oh my gosh, what's going on with the deal? Then that is going to decrease the likelihood that they're going to invest again because for people that have extra 50 to 100K on the sidelines, that's a lot of money. That might be a big portion of their savings. And if there is something that like puts a knot in their stomach and makes them uneasy about the deal, that's not going to be an emotion that they want to generate again. So always communicate what's going on. That worked well for me. Good, bad, ugly, everything in between. And don't, have it be a regular cadence as well. So always communicate in terms of what's communicated and always communicate in terms of frequency as well. Because if a certain amount of time goes by and they don't hear from you, that is going to generate that feeling of uncertainty, which again is going to be an uncomfortable feeling. People shy away from discomfort. They're not going to want to put money in investment again if, they're repeatedly feeling discomfort throughout the process. T, and this is an echo of the previous R, release into the universe. This will be quick, but T, tell even more people consistently about what I was doing. And so as I started to get deals, I started to tell even more people, doing that on repeat. I increased my Instagram following, for example. I think I had like 200 or 300 Instagram followers. And over the course of a year or two, I grew that to, it's not big at all. It's actually very, very small, but I grew that to over 2,000. And so I 10x'd it, but I did that by just constantly telling people what I was doing. And as that audience grew, I had more and more people that were interested. And, go to local meetups and I would tell people what I was doing. I met a lot of investors at local meetups. So tell more people. It's a reiteration of the same step before, but I think it's important because the more people you tell what you're doing, the more leads that you are going to get and the more private money you're going to be able to raise. And then lastly, E is for echo. Repeat all of the above over and over and over and over. All right. And so you could start at the top. And I still study the game of real estate. I still study the game of flipping. Every project is a little bit different. And the more knowledge I gain, the more I sound like a professional. The more I sound like a professional, the more I can release into the universe, the more and the better I get at influence, the better I can communicate and raise private money, so on and so forth. And so the E is for echo. and just repeat all of those steps. And those steps and me repeating them constantly are what helped me raise a whole bunch of private money. So, in summary, the steps that I use to raise a whole bunch of private money and that I continue to use in order to do that is the acronym PRIVATE. P was professional, got a lot of knowledge. R, I released everything I was doing into the universe. I told people what I was doing. I studied the art of influence. I honed the skill of influence, and I communicated with influence. V, I visually packaged the deal in a good way. A, I always communicated what was going on, both the what and the frequency, so the when. T, I told even more people about what I was doing. And then E, I echoed all of those steps. So I hope that was helpful. And I hope that helps you raise a whole bunch of private money and go buy a bunch of flips and make a bunch of money, using other people's money and helping everyday people make some more cash or make some more cash flow, because who doesn't want that? So love y'all. Thanks for listening, and until next time, peace.